I'm going to be our MC today, try to keep us on time and try to keep things moving along and maybe call on some panelists. My name is Jamie DeRuyter, and I'm the department head for the new entertainment design major at Ringling College of Art and Design. And I've been an academic advisor with Nate and the team here on this program and super excited about it. And we very much appreciate all the pros in the room here taking your time to give the feedback and mentor the next generation. That's what we're all here for, and we appreciate that. So I'm going to let each panelist introduce themselves real quick to go around the room. We have Freddy, Randy, James, Matt, Scott, and we're waiting on Mark. And so please, Freddy, lead us off, and we'll go around the room and introduce yourselves. Tell us what's your name, what you do, where you work.
All right. My name's Freddy Martin. I'm an executive producer on projects and also the director of what we call our collective of contractors who help us do design work for clients around the world. And yeah, did I say Storyland Studios? Storyland Studios. There we go.
Awesome. Randy.
Hey, Randy Smith. I'm AVP of Creative with JRA. I've been with JRA for 35 years. Done, all kinds of projects, big to small, Ferrari World, Legolands, Universal Studios. You kind of go on and on. After 35 years, you get to play with a lot of stuff. So I put together teams. I like to work with really diverse teams. I love projects that are kind of hard to get your hands on and then figure them out. I think that's the most fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Randy. Scott, welcome.
I'm Scott Ault. I'm the managing partner of Railton Entertainment Design. I too have been in the industry for 35 years, and yep, you're right. After that long, you get to play with a lot of stuff. I've done everything from World Expos to museums to corporate brand centers to theme parks and attractions around the world. Not a lot here in the United States, but mostly overseas, currently in the Middle East.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Already with our first three panelists, we're up to about 100 years of industry experience. Let's keep that rolling. Matt, how about you? Let's hear from you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matthew Wheeler. I am with JRA, part of RWS Entertainment, and I have been with JRA for 30 years. So, yeah, I'm director of visual communications there. So, design director, lead projects, and internal teams. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Excellent. We're happy you're here. Thank you, Matt. James, it's good to see you.
Hey, how are you, Jamie?
Great.
So I'm James Moore, currently creative director at Falcon's Creative, working on a variety of parks and large projects around the world. Prior to that, I did a little freelancing during the COVID years, which sort of upset my career at Walt Disney Imagineering, where I had been for about 13 to 14 years prior to that, and functioning in all sorts of capacities, mainly as a concept idea guy out into the field as art director and creative director.
Awesome. Thanks, James. And I'm sure if we add up your experience and Matt's and everybody else's, we're probably pushing around 150 years of experience on the panel here. So hopefully these students have a lot of really great golden nuggets of wisdom to draw from this. So shall we dive into our first project? I'm going to screen share and maybe do a little, just kind of scroll through the visuals a little bit while you folks talk. Maybe I'll do that for about half of each session, and then we'll go back to the full screen with the people. So let's kick it off with, let's start with Grimm's Enchanted Kingdom. Is everybody seeing my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, great. And
Yes.
who would like to lead off talking about Grimm's today?
I can.
Awesome. Go for it, Scott. Thank you.
I just looking at my notes here. I thought that this was an excellent start on a very solid master plan. That I was happy to see that the back of house and the expansion had been thought through and had considered in the layout and the planning. That I had said that in my notes, a few things that would have enhanced the depth of the master plan. there wasn't a lot of description about the attractions. What was to be done, what was the visitor experience through those individual attractions. And then also, honestly, I thought that the presentation itself hurt the thought process of the design, because there was a lot of really good thinking in the design, but the presentation itself underplayed that. That if you get to the pages where there was the POV illustrations, even though they were done, some of them were done with AI, they were too small to be able to see what it was. So big art, big ideas, fill the page, like right here, that I couldn't tell what was going on in those. So the graphic layout of the presentation itself hurt the understanding of the design.
Mhm.
I'm the one who also made the comment about the writing, that it was a little too passive. And you're the designer. State what it is. Be declarative. Don't say, well, it could be this, or, so no, you're the designer. You're the one. Get the audience excited through the writing. So those were my thoughts.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Who wants to jump in on that?
Yeah, I think I agree with Scott that it's nice to see, or what I thought was great. It was just this going after a kind of a full, experience. A theme park's a challenge. You've got a lot of moving parts, and then so to try to tackle that, and to kind of have a lot of different parts, and not just like one single little attraction or something within the overall plan, but really trying to go after a whole plan. Commendable. I agree. I kind of felt like I wanted a little more depth in a few places, and I think that would have given me, it would have felt more well-rounded. Yeah. But it's nice to see someone really go after a big zone, and to try to see how all those parts fit, because that's a challenge.
It is a lot to think about.
Certainly.
What struck me that was really well thought through is this slide right here, this image of Hanau, Germany, and the backstory of that particular area. When you're choosing a site for something like this, any attraction, it doesn't matter if you're wanting to put your cookie shop in a mall, you're going to ask the question, what do people in this area want and need? What do visitors who come to this area want and need? And that, to me, was the sort of kicker for this, is if we're going to talk about Grimm's fairy tales, where better than to be in the place where they were first created? And so that was well thought out. I appreciated that. My only hack to that was that I caught that I think Cinderella's a French tale, not a German tale from that area. So grab another princess and add her to that. Other than that, that's I was impressed by the backstory.
Yeah, and I will say, I think I think the guests coming to an actual attraction, using the fairy tales as the basis is huge. But I think also the guest is going to come with some preconceived ideas about their experience in the tales and the writing. And so I would like to have seen just a little bit more reference to the fairy tales themselves, and then how that's translated into a three-dimensional environment. And those are some pretty tall asks, but I think it's commendable in what was done here. I just think that some of the reference images could have been maybe a little stronger in how you take the stories and then translate them to an experience.
Yeah, I agree with you, Matthew. That's a little bit of the challenge I had here, but I commend the effort. There was a lot there. If we do look at the master plan, I think it was a really good start. I do think the presentation of it, going back to the earlier comment about presentation, is huge here, because I do find it very difficult to read because of some of the colors being reused for what ostensibly should be multiple or different areas or different usages. Even just at a high glance like this, I see all that blue. I'm like, that's waterways everywhere? So that, to me, the presentation itself and how we display that was a little challenging. I like some of the thought. Again, I also agree they could have gone a little deeper into some of the individual stories and the attractions, even again to the stories and how dark they generally are. Yet there were plenty of references to this being very quote unquote magical, etc. So how do we merge the two? And is this really trending more magical, quote unquote, fun, humorous, or is it trending more dark like the original stories? I did like some of this, some of the efforts to create some models. So you're giving forth your own design style and how you would address some of these structures, which I like. But then I do find a disparity between the rendering of each of these, and then your additional use of the AI art. Being the creative I am and the artist at my core, I don't like the AI art. That is a personal bias that I have. I do not like using it because, again, that takes you away from your personal design philosophies and mentalities and how you would do this stuff, which is what I want to see. But overall, I did really enjoy this. And again, I thought it had a really strong foundation overall.
Excellent. That was very timely, very concise. Everybody took a turn speaking. We are right on track. Thanks, everyone. That's great. I'm just going to go ahead and keep my screen share then. And if anybody else has anything to add about that, are we good on that one? We can move on to the next one. Okay, great. Let's do that. Let's go right to Distant Paradise. Okay, who wants to lead off on this one?
Still seeing Grimm's on your screen or on my screen.
Oh.
Anybody else?
I see Distant Paradise now.
I'm on Paradise. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Go for it. Mine may just be taking a little while to update, but I also have the website open on another tab, so I'll use that.
There you go. Yeah, you can go off to the side. Okay. All right, Freddie, I'm gonna pick on you. You go first.
All right. I always get caught up in the story. I know this is the master plan thing, but my take on having this Bob character moving through the entire project is really neat. It's a really cool connector period, and that he exists in some time prior to when the guest lands at the park. I feel like that's a really helpful way to always consistently be able to build upon the story, whether you're adding a new attraction, adding a new F&B, something that comes along, you can always build into your legend of this person, Bob, and have that carry in and on through. So that was my big take from it. I did want to see more from a guest narrative perspective, but overall really pleased with the concept.
Thank you, Freddie. Who wants to jump in after that?
I will. I was a little confused on this one. Was it a standalone or was it a land within a park?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a land within the park, on the master plan, why was there parking? And things like back of house and operations. But my big takeaway, like Freddie, was what do people do here? That there was no sense of what people do or experience in this land for me. That the plan has 2 rides, but there's no indication as to what they are. And that why was there so much focus on what things taste like? That's not the guest experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that what took me out of the whole thing. And, that, it was a focus on taste, smell, and audio. but there was nothing that was indicative of what people see and do. So that was my feeling of the biggest thing to work on for this.
Yeah, it's like in general, I think you could say that this is a master planning category, but a lot of times we didn't get enough story to help us like get our heads around the whole why the plan is the plan, and that could be said for almost everybody, because I think we were all struggling with like wanting to know why the plan was the plan, because I mean, and you have to get into story, you have to get deeper into attractions so that they can come, so that the plan makes sense for us all. And I think that was my biggest struggle, probably not just on this project, but if all the way around. So.
Yeah, and I think I'll add to that, Randy, because I think, well, I know Randy and I worked independently from each other. We went away and we actually talked about this one, I think, in passing once. I really thought it was an F&B standalone. That was the project, and you took, the team took that and directive and used that as a venue within the park, and didn't really spend any time on the park, or spent a lot less time on there. And I remember talking to Randy, and he's like, kind of like, that was my first take, because I'm like, oh, this is an F&B, and then I got further into it, and I just wanted more. I wanted to understand more. So my interpretation, right or wrong, was that, oh, this was a choice to really focus in on F&B and that component.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Real quick shout out to Mark for joining us. Hi, Mark. Welcome.
Hi. Sorry I was late.
Quite all right.
Trapped in other meetings, but
very understandable. We're just on our second project here. We're reviewing Distant Paradise, and everybody's kind of going around the table taking turns. Sorry, James, I feel like you were just about to jump in when I said that.
Oh, no, that's quite all right. I was about to say that the earlier feelings too, Mark and I shared, there was a little confusion and how to basically taking each of these on their own merits and how they weighed up to the various elements that were supposed to be in this category, master planning being one of them, and so forth. As far as this one, this was probably the project I was a little the harshest on. Just because of the same concerns that were already mentioned. It's very confusing because I saw parking too. I sort of assumed, well, this is a park, but then if it is, what am I doing in it? There's definitely some granularity in where they were thinking about some of the F&B. So I understand those comments and what the menus could look like and some of the soundscape. But again, the larger questions were never for me answered. What am I doing here? Why am I here? Is this what it is? And ultimately, it just tried to represent, I think, and touch on a lot of very high level things that were very quote unquote loosey goosey without diving into the details. I think it could have helped. And ultimately, then I was just lost throughout it. Additionally, I think as far as the presentation itself goes, while there are some things there, like some mood boards and so on and so forth, that can help, but need more context, as well as just, I think, a little more professionalism throughout this presentation, because it is just, there's just a lot of hit and miss and a lot of very, very rudimentary displays. Even like the master plan just looks like a napkin sketch, and maybe it's supposed to be that way, but I just need more context for that, where I don't see that throughout, where I see more refined AI art, I see more refined backgrounds, some more refined mood boards, and then I see very, very, very rudimentary pencil sketches and so on, and descriptions that are very lightweight and don't help me understand what is going on here, what's the story, what's the conceit, why am I doing this, or how does this fit into the overarching picture, story, narrative of this entire place, outside of a few just early high-level bits and pieces.
Awesome. Mark, I'm going to call on you.
Yeah. All right.
Do you want to add to this?
Sure.
Or-
Yeah. No.
Put you on the
And
spot.
I've heard about half the comments on this, but I agree with a lot of it. And I think the general consensus with all of these, but this one in particular, is it's clear that understanding what master planning is in itself almost a challenge, because the way I had to evaluate these wasn't in comparison to each other, but just on their own merits of what they were able to accomplish. And was it in my opinion, if you even granularize master planning more, it's about taking broad strokes that connect all the pieces together. It's like an artist that's able to do something with just a big brush is kind of what the master plan is. And so this was an example where you get a little distracted with a menu or a display or something because it's a cool item, and that's not really, wouldn't be part of that bigger broad stroke kind of exercise. So, but all in all, yeah, I think that was kind of the challenge with all of them, but I think I agree with everything that's been said so far.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you, Mark. I think that wraps up everybody's hit this one. We can move on to the next one. We're keeping great time. Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to, I've lost my overall page. So now I may not be going in the order that they're listed on the site. We're going to go now in the order that they're open in the tabs up here. Let's move on to Isla Kai, University of Florida. Do we have Olivia with us here today? Hey, hello, welcome.
Hello, I'm here. Thank you so much.
Great. Who wants to lead off with some comments about Isla Kai?
I got to get caught up.
Scroll through a few of the
Crab.
images. That'll help us.
That's
Crab.
Sir Crabs, Tiki Bar.
So I have a start on the master plan and really the guest flow and how that is impacted here. I really love the creative work that's done on this and the idea of this space and place where we're at the edge of the water and onto the shore. You can tell I'm a tiki guy, so I love all of that stuff. So you already had me at that. But there's a challenge, right? You want to take your story from one end to another, and there's another project in here I think that has this issue. Which side of the park do I want to be on, and which side of the park do I want to start on? And if my story is being told linearly, then I must follow what you're trying to get me to go do. And if I get caught up on one end of the land, then I got to come back to this other end of the land. So having that little pinch point is really a difficult location to go in and out of two major lands. One story part, though, that we were trying to do this on a project, and I thought, man, it is brilliant. Like if you enter a coaster queue in one land, and you exit in another land, it's a great way to tell stories. I always wanted Star Tours to end and you actually walk out in Star Wars, not back into Tomorrowland. And so that is a really cool part of this that I wish somebody would make happen. So the pinch point of moving from land to land, I think is really difficult, but I want to see a land to land attraction. So
yeah, I think for me, it's kind of it's a similar comment as before. You really put us into these two different environments, but I wanted a little bigger taste of the whole land, right? And just from an overall planning, if we bring the master plan down to individual, restaurants, I get it, but I almost didn't really want to see the rest of the land because I didn't feel like it had as much depth. So, I love how much this has, and then I wanted I wanted more of that in the whole land. So it's kind of back to that whole discussion about how you get communicate a master plan in maybe two venues. It's a real trick.
My comment on that, and I know this is an industry discussion, but this feels like a fully flushed out concept. This isn't. Granted, it's a tremendous amount of work. Rather than a 20,000-foot view, it's like you see every finish, you see every material, you see every detail, and it really has to do for me with the render and and the model here, because I can see the grain of that wood versus, do I understand overall story, overall message? Am I looking at, it's, and I commend you for that, but this is really, to me, it's a full flushed out concept. And every, it really has more to do with the renders. And we talk about this all the time. Yeah, at JRA, it's like, what level of render do we need at what point in time? Obviously, you have an enormous talent and grasp on the model and the rendering programs that you've used. I don't know specifically what you used on this, but that will take you far. I wish this was a little bit less detailed, and to me, that amount of detail comes through too much in the render. That's my only criticism for that. Other than this, I love the story. I love the sea, land, above, below, that whole immersion. I think that's great. To me, it's detail. It's detail in the render. And are you giving away too much, for a master plan? Think about if you're going to get paid, did you get paid to do this amount of work? Because that would be my question.
Yeah, I would, to add to that, I think it feels like these venues are well designed, and then maybe the master plan came second, right? If you look at the work that the focus was on these venues, and so they're great venues. So I would almost, to like full circle the project, which is okay. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you know what your icon is, and so you design your icon, and then you back out and do your master plan. So that method's fine. But I think what would help is you have the narratives that describe what you're seeing, but then you add those little thumbnail images. I mean, inspirational little teeny sketches, just reference images to kind of create the journey. So always starting big and going small. And this felt like it was great small, and then went big secondary, right? So I think that taking that approach is always how I always look at a master plan, and what elements we'd want is what is the inspiration. And it's amazing how much just reference images does a lot in early development. Just, it's like this, it's like that, or I don't quite find an image, so do a little sketch. It's more like this, or it's more like that. And that helps tell that narration and that guest journey through a space.
I agree with everything that has been said so far, but I also have one story point and visual vocabulary question. In your write-up, you say that this was discovered and overtaken by sea life. Isla is now run solely by animals. I don't see any of that reflected in the design. I don't see how the animals have adapted the human work to become part of their world. It still looks very much like it is owned and operated by humans. So, for example, what design choices and aesthetics would the animals have made in making this place theirs? For example, wouldn't the nets used in the design scare the hell out of the sea creatures, because those are torture devices? How do the human things get repurposed in a sea creature world? There's a great opportunity there for some very clever design choices.
Yeah, that is a very good note, and that was something I had noted too when I had reviewed this. And to the earlier points, I was seeing it like concept and more almost of a full, like we're headed down the road to a full interiors package. Nicely done, but again, not necessarily related to this, but just a little advice from all of my experiences is like when you do present these things that are so well developed like that. A lot of art directors, clients, et cetera, will think, well, hey, the design's already done. And I think, this sort of goes in line with what was mentioned earlier. So, and that there's no room for their input. So that's where I think, again, it comes back to, you know, where do you ease up a little bit so that it looks still conceptual and you have an even treatment of all of the assets and all of the thinking across it, as opposed to some being really developed and others being not. Another little side note I would make, just looking at the master plan, that you know, I agreed with Mark. It did feel like, you know, we did the detail work, almost like the trouble you have when doing a painting, where you want to get detailed too quickly, and then you try to back out to larger strokes. I think I see some potential here, but again, to the earlier mention of the singular bottleneck through the master plan, sort of does challenge me. Some of the other challenges I have were just with the general scale at which I perceive these things, from your crab's tiki bar that I see photos of versus how it's represented in here against other things, such as like the size of an indoor coaster. When you actually start to make those more appropriate, I think it will start to change your layout dramatically. And then the other caveat I would give, and I know this is very doable, but you do have some things like your large restaurant and so on and so forth, very landlocked. So is there a way to reorient that such that you have better service access and so forth out the back without, you know, obstructing guests and so forth, or having it be visible to them? And then, you know, ultimately there was that narrative pit too earlier on, which was one of the first things I had noticed. But all in all, I think it was really well done. A lot of work and effort in here, a lot of great thinking. I love to see some of this and how you're working. So keep at it.
All right, team, thank you so much. Those were all really valuable comments. And Olivia, real quick, we could take a minute or so. Did you have any questions you wanted to follow up since you're here and you took the time to join us today?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you all so much. I really appreciate all of your insight and everything. I guess from my perspective, I kind of thought with the nets that it was something that the animals had kind of taken and it was like theirs, and now they had it on, you know, it's like one of their treasures that they had collected, as like, oh, we overtook this from the humans, we took our nets back, kind of thing. But that is an interesting point to bring up, that maybe it's not so much, or maybe that would have to be kind of like elaborated on a little bit further, because that is a great point. My question for y'all is, so with all the programs that we have and all the technology that we have, it definitely makes it so ideas like this can become very photorealistic. Do you have any suggestions on how to kind of bring that down to a level that a client could see that and know that they could still want to make changes and have their input and not just make it look so final? That makes sense.
It's an everyday challenge.
Yeah.
I would say for me, it's think like a painter, not like, you know, the computer generated, the ability to lay on textures is so easy, but it also takes us right into that, like it's done, it's finished, it's perfect. And you know, one of the things that we're always trying to do is find kind of an emotion in the illustration, tell a story in the illustration, and I find it is to think like a painter. So think about light first and like where it's coming from, and then and find your focal point, because a lot of photo illustration, you see everything all at the same level and scale. So find that focal point and then move from it. Think about composition, all those things. It's kind of old school approach, but it helps give it a little more dynamic.
Excellent. Thank you, Randy. Anybody else want to add a quick thought to that note?
Nope, that was exactly what I was going to say. I would just add to that, go back and look at some of the great concept designers like Herb Ryman and stuff like that from old Imagineering books and so forth. Like, look at the artistry in that and how he's guiding your eyes, and at the same time, like, not every detail is shown. There's still stuff that's open to the viewer's imagination. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that is what it's about too. You want to capture the spirit and the story, what's happening, not necessarily every detail.
Great. Yeah, great point.
And don't be afraid to show your work even in a final presentation type setting. Mm-hmm. I think some of the areas I scored high on these projects is where I saw little thumbnail sketches and where I saw the thinking, and clients expect that too. I mean, we have a client right now that expects 3 options for everything we do. And we're just like, sometimes we're like, do we really need to do 3 options for everything? But having the optionality, I think is definitely what makes it sellable.
I was once working on a project with an architect that would specifically get into the level of detail like what you're showing, because he said, I want them arguing about the color of the brick, not about whether there is brick. So he would use it as a subversion technique to be able to get his way.
That's interesting. I might also just add real quick as a closing thought on that question, Olivia, that sometimes I think it could be a question of timing. When is it time to do a very detailed, very tight photorealistic render? It tends to be later, when many of the decisions have been made and everybody agrees it's going to be brick. Okay, now's the time to put the brick on the render. So timing can play a big role in that too.
That's great.
Okay, team, thank you so much. We're going to roll on to the next project. And in the interest of getting through all these in a reasonable amount of time, let's move on to Brilliance, a tour of the brain. Who wants to kick this off?
Oops.
You know, I think the most, I'll kick this off, because I think the most interesting element of this is the subject matter. It's a really, to jump in and take mental health as a subject and an issue is commendable. I mean, how do you do that? What would that look like? And I thought that this, in a very abstract way, was a really good attempt at doing that. It was an unnerving. I'll be honest. I mean, it was like, what would this experience be like? How do I, and I know some of that is intent, in its design and its concept. So I think you've done well there in delivering that. I was a little bit confused, and I'm sure that was part of the intent too. Reading back, I think I read this a couple of times, and looking at the opportunity of where you were taking this, I felt like I left a little flat though. Like if you're going to take on this broad of a subject, my thought when I got through the experience, got through it as a master plan, it's like I wanted to leave something behind as a memory, as a continuance, as a piece that the guest can actually participate in. And I just felt like it was a little missing in that. I wanted a way to react, or leave a comment, or leave an opinion, or that kind of commentary for me was missing at the very end of this. And that's kind of but overall, I mean, wow, this was way different than anything I ever have experienced, in a concept and master plan piece. So I think that was really commendable. Nice job.
Yeah, I actually looked up Wonderland. I needed to understand what that mental situation is. And in case you don't know, it's somebody who feels like their body is either the wrong size, like Alice in Wonderland's body is the wrong size. Yes, so the answer was, or my left incomplete was, there's no resolution, or there's no interpretive section where they say, so there are all of these people. I'm left to kind of guess that this is what they meant to say. So there are all of these people who have these issues, and we walk next to them day by day by day, and somehow help us to, if especially this mental health issue applies to me, how do I go through life? Or if it applies to a loved one or a stranger, how do I go through life now, having understood this experience more? And that shows in the master plan. Actually, if you look at the way it's shown there, we only see these first 4 rooms, and we're left without any description of what the final rooms are.
I'm going to be the contrarian here because, like Matthew, I agree that this is a subject matter that it could be tackled very interestingly and very topically. But I felt that the design vocabulary and approach that you took belittles the subject matter.
Mhm.
It was so high tech, there was nothing organic about it. And in your write-up, you said that your biggest takeaway was empathy. Well, there was no warmth indicated in the design to be able to indicate that. And that the idea of turning this into a pop-up event that is fun and full of selfies and stuff like that just felt inappropriate.
Yeah, Scott, you're not the only contrarian. I said some of the same notes too. I had some of the same notes in what I had given for this. Well, first I'll start with the earlier note, which I also agree with. From a master plan perspective, it was hard to understand what's going on because it's not a complete experience. Like I don't know what goes on for half of these rooms. I also don't understand how guests are supposed to actually flow through this when it looks like just dead ends, or even how it works operationally. But I had a challenge with that too as I read through this, and made mention of the same things. Everything's very squared off. There's the body is an organic thing, and this is an organic experience. Or just anything you would perceive when you perceive emotions, when you perceive something about us, you're generally thinking in organic terms. And there's nothing here to that. In addition, it's all just gloss and glass. And then there's multiple mentions of photo ops and so on and so forth. So is this actually supposed to be a fun experience? Are we somehow turning this into fun? And I don't know how you do that. And this is coming from someone that designed a hurricane exhibit for Epcot, in a fun theme park, and made it work. How do you make this work? I think it's possible, but I don't think you're representing it well here. And I think there is a bit of a disservice here because I'm not seeing how you would come away with the empathy. What are the beats you're making me experience to send me in the direction of empathy, or to send me in the direction of even more information? What are we doing as far as carrots? Because that's what I did there. Like no one there wants to learn about how to secure your home from a hurricane, but the whole point was to give them little carrots and nuggets. And then if they wanted to, when they went home, I gave them all of the ability to go seek out more of that information and get it on their own. What I'm just trying to present are just the little nuggets, but do it in a way that would make sense. And so I definitely felt some disconnections through here, and I agree very much with that sentiment.
James, could I jump in real quick? Are you talking about Stormstruck?
I am talking about Stormstruck.
Yeah.
Once again, the industry reveals itself as I animated the content on that, and here we go. Like we did not know we worked on the same project. It happens in this world all the time.
Yeah, that was after my internship. That was one of my first jobs, is basically everything, art director, creative director, and so on and so forth. And that was a really good way to, like, small projects like that are a great way to learn, because it's a microcosm. It's a larger project just boiled down into a year in a much smaller venue, and those are great to learn on.
Right. It's a very appropriate reference for this, a very serious subject matter, but we're trying to implement it in an entertainment venue, when people are running around the park and having fun, and where's that balance? And so that's a great angle to kind of come at this.
Yeah, there was a lot of internal questioning about that too. And in the end, to the credit of it all, it was the most successful Interventions exhibit ever.
It was a lot of fun. Okay, anybody else want to jump in on this one? We still have Randy and Mark.
Oh, so the one thing that I would add. So I felt split on this one, right? The way, because when I read into it, I wasn't sure I got it, but I will say, so I agree with a lot of things being said. The one thing that I think was really successful in this project was its consistency in its art direction.
Yeah.
You had a big team, and I felt like it held together really well from a visual standpoint. So that was the thing that I thought was really good here. I'm not sure that it was right for the project. I'm not sure that that I felt fully complete with the exhibit, but I will say it was pretty nice about how the team held together and in terms of their overall delivery. So,
Randy, that's a keen observation. I feel like this project probably wasn't really meant to be master planning. It really was an art direction exercise, collaboration between spatial designers and graphic designers. And I think that does shine through here.
yeah.
Any last thoughts, Mark? Did you want to add anything before we move on?
I guess just quickly, I mean, I think we probably said this at the beginning, but we always be very critical because this is the evaluation. So we say lots of negative things, but I think what was just mentioned there is like the imagery. Some of it is beautiful, but we're trying to be critical, and so we're looking at stuff. And the only comment I'd add to what everyone's been saying is, what I do like is that this took something that hasn't been done before, right? This is a topic that's no one's explored. So whether you're success or fail at representing it, there's some level of success there because you went into realms unknown. But then also with the negative comment, if you take this like a dark ride or any kind of a theme park experience, there's always that ray of hope, right? I mean, a dark ride narrative is almost the same. And again, that should be challenged. So to the point of this kind of challenging things is great, but you know, a dark ride is you're invited to a journey to experience something. Some disaster happens. In this case, the disaster is learning about all of these ailments, but then there was no, you know, birthday party at the end. You know, there's no I mean, that's what we do. We throw, what do you do when you don't have a good story? You just have everyone clapping and congratulations, you did it, you know? So there's none of that kind of happy moment at the end. And so that's, you know, with that somehow wrapping it all together, it would have been a pretty strong concept, I think.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark, for closing that one out for us. Let's move on to the next project here, the Magic School Bus Manic Field Trip. We have Joe here. We do not have Joe here with us today. Okay. Who wants to lead off? Three-minute video here. I'm gonna have to skip through some of this.
I really enjoyed the presentation. I got a sense actually that Joe, that this isn't where he spends his time working on stuff. There were a few times where I thought, oh, he's well, I think he said, the first time I visited a Disney park was, 2 months ago or something like that. And so there's this sense that, wow, he's really a fan, but he hasn't really dove into it. So a lot of what his presentation brings to mind is like, this is a guy who's really done his homework and is really learning as he goes. So there's quite a bit of just really good help throughout this. And what I noted that throughout the presentation, every time I had a concern, somehow the next slide he would wrap it up. He'd figure it out. And I thought it was just really, really helpful stuff. The only there was a call out in one of our panel discussions about how about using IP with or without permission. And I kind of stood back and said, I'm not sure how to score this because of that. And because I didn't see anywhere that he had clearance to use this IP at all in a presentation. So that was a negative part. Then the master plan part, I struggled to, having been to a Disney park, that this non-Disney IP doesn't belong anywhere near Fantasyland where he placed it. So that was a jarring piece about it. Presentation wide, all of the homework and stuff to it was really commendable.
And I did like we're looking at right here, there was a lot of analysis, and that's, the nuts and bolts. And as much as we don't want to admit it, when you're master planning a park, a lot of it is spreadsheets and numbers and kind of this boring stuff. And so all this boring stuff was considered, lots of diagrams, circulation things. So there was, the analysis was good with this. But I think similar, the story wise, there's lots of kind of inspirational images, lots of things that kind of show what it could be, but I didn't quite know, what it was. There, very detailed, models again of things, and it's just like, so there's lots of great elements, but then what's the overarching story? Like, what's the real, what do you get out of it as a guest, and all that. So, but yeah, commendable for doing all the homework. It was a very, well homeworked, and I think it was just one individual, right? It was just Joe. He didn't have a team. So that was the other element. Like the last group, right? It's hard to compare the two because they're completely different. A single individual can make all the art direction decisions themselves, and there'll be that consistency, and they can get really, obsessive into the specific of what they want it to be, but it's a different beast than when you're working with a group of people. So it's hard to compare them directly to each other for that reason.
I agree. One of my notes was that I was impressed that this was all done by one person. But I think that the project would have benefited, with a team of other members as skilled and as informed as what Joe is. That I thought that this was one of the more thought out presentations, but it felt a little uneven. The story sequence and the technical systems were well covered, but the rest of the design elements were not as strong.
Yeah, it was about a ride experience, operational, and like you said, the story progresses through an experience. Dead on. I mean, nailed that. Yeah, maybe Joe's interest is more in ride ops, ride design, ride. It was very, very strong there.
Yeah, that was my takeaway too. I assumed that was what he seemed to really enjoy. And again, I was fairly impressed, like the rest of the group here, that it was one person, and that he had done a fair bit of analysis, research, and given quite a bit of thought to a lot of the more analytical and technical sides of this. Again, I think and overall, I thought it came off very, very well. I do wish that the overarching video where he presented everything had been a little more succinct. I don't think it was like a half hour or something like that. I don't think it needed to be that long. And again, I also agree with the fact that as I viewed it, knowing Magic Kingdom, and that he sort of placed it there, and this was the whole IP thing again, I was like, okay, that is a non sequitur. It does not work. So that was a little challenging from the get-go. But once he dove into some of the analytics, some of his thought behind the ride, how it functioned, and so forth, that's where really I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, I think if he had pulled this, I mean, this really is a standalone project, and I think if he had just pulled it apart and not given us any background, we would have had a different kind of criticism, but we would not have been like distracted by the Magic Kingdom, and and that's probably where we should judge it in the end, because it's really a standalone project. I think I think to even call it a master plan, it's a master plan within itself, not really in the whole. So yeah.
Yep, this could be certainly like in an old Sears, right? Those old abandoned anchor stores in a mall. Maybe this would just slot right in. Okay, thank you, everyone. We're gonna move on to the next project. Let's see, we already did Grimm's. We did this then. Peter Rabbit's Secret Garden. We have Beryl, Lucas, Tarana, any of these artists with us, or designers? No, not here today. All right, who wants to kick this off?
Welcome.
I'll pick on people. Randy goes first today on this one.
And I'm not, I think this is one as well, but I want to go back to the comment on the last one about the length of the overall video. I think in general, everybody probably should work on the tightening up of the presentation, right? it feels like that if we're over 5 minutes, we're probably, we might want to break it up into more videos, and in general, I felt like that happened in a lot of the presentations. It was like, we're going to put everything in, regardless if we need to put everything in. And that got tricky sometimes, it meant like, I want to get to the, the high points. So that was one thing. Specifically here, I kind of love this like premise, and this I liked the kind of overall. Again, this was one where I thought, like, presentation-wise, the overall art direction of the whole presentation really held together. It had a nice feel. They were consistent. There's a color palette. They really tried to stay there. They kept it in this kind of naive graphics. I thought that was cool. Yeah.
Thank you, Randy.
But, piggybacking on that, the presentation itself, I thought, hurt it, because it started off, the presentation, you should start off with a summary of what this is and what the story of the place is that gives everything else context. The first thing that they started off with was a service overview. This would come much later in the presentation. So that threw me, and it made it very difficult to follow.
Right.
And I don't understand, I never got what the purpose of the project was. Is it a themed hotel attached to a destination resort? Is it a standalone? What was it? So I was having a hard time evaluating it in that context.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Freddie, what do you
Yeah,
think?
I sort of felt like the presentation was essential. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, James.
I sort of felt that the presentation was basically following a guest perspective and from a guest point of view. Henceforth, why you have that and you follow some of that. So again, I was a little lost, and while I love seeing some of the pre-engagement, as I've did a bunch of that with NGE and so forth, like, again, is that too granular where I'm still sort of confused as to, like the previous statement, is this a hotel attached to something? Is this its own particular destination? And then if so, what am I doing here? What's compelling me to stay and to do some of these things is where I had a little challenge. I do like the conceit. I do love, like, I thought, again, it was one of the better presentations. I love the fact that they had some nice hand-drawn sketches, some reference. I even like the fact that they did some actual models, some light models and so forth to demonstrate and to show the thinking behind it. But again, I would have loved to have seen it laid out in more master planning ahead of time to understand the context, the overarching context, before drilling down into, so that I could better understand some of the granularity that happens later.
Yeah. I think oftentimes we, at least as my experience has been, if we're going to do a park or a activation with a hotel and RD&E type of thing, we start with our program and say, what do we want here? And if it's a park, you say,
Right.
well, one water ride, one coaster, one dark ride, and some F&B. And then we place those before we start getting into all the details of what's inside of them. We still have, we have this wonderful statement up front that guides all of that design and thought. But like you said, I think that's flip-flopped. The concepts are really high here, but where and how they connect has been tough to follow. And I'm wearing glasses. It would be really great to have been able to read things a little bit clearer. They were small and tight. That said, I'm in love with the family aspect of this, that we're gonna do gardening together. We're going to live in these holes like rabbits, and that the rooms are well thought out with who's going to be coming to this resort and participating in, you know, where they're going to stay. And so that I commend them for that. And these renders, these pencil renders, are really, really wonderful.
Yeah, those are professional level sketches.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think that's what's really makes this, to me, this presentation is one of my favorites, because it leverages the team individual strengths here. And it really holds together well. You got model work, you've got hand sketching, you've got some story content and planning, and I think it does a really good job at allowing the individuals to kind of highlight their strengths, and then just a really nicely well put together presentation.
Yeah, I think for this one, this is probably one of the ones that brought me back to my college education and group projects, and sometime my disdain of group projects, because I could very much see 3 different people in this presentation, 3 different skill sets, and no leader that's like saying, oh, that was, no, you got to do this, you got to do that. Like in a professional world, I mean, that was always of course, as a college student, you can be pessimistic, but I was very much like, why are we doing all these group projects? This is what it's like in the professional world, but it very much, you have to work together to do things. But the difference is there's also a leader, there's a creative director, there's someone that's kind of making the calls for the group. And in a school setting, everyone's at the same pay range, the pay level, right? So everyone has their own influence. But so all that rambling aside, I think what's good is it showcased a lot of talent, like the last comment, and I think that's cool. But there's an obvious disconnect between this, super green and highly saturated model to the physical models to the sketches, and so the only thing that ties it together is the PowerPoint, the presentation sheets, which is great actually. I mean, the color palette, all that stuff is what you want to do, but having someone in charge to put it all together and cut things that weren't quite working and stuff like that is kind of the difference between a student group project and a professional group project, I guess. but overall though, yeah, a fun idea, fun premise, anything that's, just brings out, playing like a child and having some of these interactives that they thought about, I think were fun. And how can you integrate farming into a play environment and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure we've all had those kind of conversations when we think of play areas that we want to do, like what do we do that hasn't been done before, and so there's some good thoughts in here.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. That was everybody on this one. I appreciate the comment of group work at school. I often, we put students into groups, and it's always entertaining when one of them wants to step up and say that they're the art director on the project.
Yeah.
It's always a fun learning opportunity for them. Power dynamics and group work. All right, thank you everyone for that. We had Ohi with us here right up until this moment.
Oh no!
Yeah, we were just about to switch to his project. I wonder if he's coming back. Let's see. Do we have? So Carolyn is here. Maybe we'll do this one now since Carolyn is here, and maybe Ohi will come back. We could do that. Let's talk about Lamer. Who wants to jump in on this one?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna gush. And
Freddy, go ahead and gush.
Full disclosure here. Carlin used to work with us in our fabrication shop, and so I was super shocked and surprised to find her on here doing this work. So high five, old friend. This is so unique to this to this part of the panel, to this category. But this is just such a well thought out plus up of any locale. It could be at Downtown Disney or at City Walk, and fit right in. I remember some of those experience food shops in the malls back in the 80s where you could get a donut made by an elf and it just looked like there was a little guy making an elf, or even the popcorn at the stands at Disneyland, some little creatures making it for you. And to integrate animation and all of that is just with really well thought out beverages. I just thought this one had everything for as compact and as much as it is. My one critique is this: food service and entertainment employees don't mix. They're to pay an actor to work on your to mix your drinks in front of you and do it well according to a character is going to be a tough call. And then the same way to get a food service person to live up to the vision is going to be a tough call. So apart from the difficulties there, I guess my comment on how to fix that is that the food service people talk to the mermaid. The mermaid pretends to make the food, and then the food service person hands it off. So it could be an integration that way. Really, really cool construction and ideas on it. I see what this is a no-brainer. Somebody should buy this.
Yeah, one of my absolute favorites. I love the simplicity of it, and also the 1904, the World's Fair Expo and everything that came out of that was new and unique and different, and the Art Deco fit well with that. I have no idea how this got slotted into master plan or master planning.
I'd like to say it's a rookie mistake.
Rookie mistake.
other than maybe you're thinking about, well, I've got this master plan idea, and it's one one thing I can hand over, and you could literally, like as was just said, you could buy it. I loved it.
Yeah.
I too thought it was a beautiful idea. It was very attractive. It was clever, but yeah, I thought that it was miscategorized, that it should have been in, innovation or something, not necessarily in the master plan or placemaking, because this is an integral part of placemaking, but doesn't create the whole place. The one thing that I would have loved to have seen with this presentation are some plans, elevations, and sections to show the thinking of how the cart would function.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we all are on the same line of this one. It's beautiful, just wrong category, right? But the only, if I had to give a critique on the aesthetics, so like what I do love about it is it's not quite anything specific, which is what's nice. It's not, you didn't just take a glass dome and stick it on top of a green box. Like this has some shape and some dimension to it that's not, you don't really know what it is. Is this part of a ship that took you under the sea or whatever? So it kind of alludes to some of the feeling of sea exploring, and you don't really know why. And I think that's what's great about design, and especially in themed entertainment, is you can take an element and skew it enough that it's not initially identifiable, but it still emotes the feeling of undersea. Like I don't really, it's hard for me to even describe why I look at that and think it's under the sea, but it very much does that. So, but my only criticism, if anything, would be the bottom half, the green box could have had a little more of that same elegance, right? So that top elegance, and the bottom, there was a little bit of a disconnect there, but still, I mean, some of these sketches and some of this early work, like we're seeing on the screen, shows a lot of the inspiration behind it. So well done, but you didn't win. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I totally love this. I thought it was, I love the idea. I think I said to Matt, I'm like, I really want to figure this one out, right? Because I mean, that's when you've got us going, I want to do that, or change that means we've already bought into it. I just didn't think it belonged in master planning. That's the only That's where I got confused, but I thought it was
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, same here. But again, same. I guess I basically mirror and would replicate all the previous notes. Again, being the artist, I love the Art Nouveau period. Alphonse Mucha is one of my favorites. So I love a lot of that. I'm also a big Boba Tea fan, so you had me there, and I thought it was a brilliant little idea. I even loved how you had the spreadsheet of financials and so forth. So all in all, like, I'm ready to buy in, but that would be my only comment. And category aside, I don't care. Like, I'm looking at this as a singular set piece cart. Is that Disney Springs in the background of your render?
Yeah.
I thought so.
Zara.
I worked on some concepts for some of that early on.
Oh,
So
no way.
I would just say with Mark that like, there's so much richness in Art Nouveau, and you're trying to capture a lot of that on the top half of your design. And since this is clearly going to be a very custom designed cart and so forth, I think you could push the rest of the design further on the bottom half there, as well as then to the earlier comment too, that would give you the opportunity to work in some sections and so forth where would all the mechanicals go, and how would this work? And that would be my only add. I even love the concepts for the cups and so forth, how you were thinking through all of the various details. So well done.
James, thank you for that segue, because I wanted to make a comment about these as well. These are so appealing, and I wonder, Carlin, if you might consider like putting Tanqueray, gin, and the sea cucumber and mint, right? Yeah. Maybe it's not just boba. Maybe this, I could see gin, I could see tequila,
that's a really big gin glass.
It is.
Does gin break down boba? If it doesn't,
yeah, I didn't know if those go together, honestly.
No, I don't want it to be gin boba. I just want like a gin, sea cucumber, and mint drink in this cup, because these cups are so fantastic.
Again, I just love,
awesome.
and again, this is different because now we're on a very, very small and detailed level, but that's how I function in a lot of capacities, is just going into that. So I love seeing the thoughts you put into every little detail, because every little detail matters. It's all in the details that we can hide the story. We can hide these different conceits and things that people can then have the opportunity to dive in. So I thought this was great. Again, I don't know what category you'd put it in, but it was a great concept.
Excellent. Okay, Carlin, thank you so much for your patience. You've stuck through this whole call to get to your moment. Would you like to take a moment to ask any questions? We have about a minute that we could spend on that.
Oh, great. I just want to say thank you so much for all your feedback. And I'm not sorry I put it in this category, because you all have been so insightful, and I would have missed out on that. I guess one comment that I've been getting a lot on this is that the guest experience, and even someone said in the report card that engagement are singularly unique and compelling, and that it needs to differentiate or be more unique. And I'd love to know if any of you guys had any ideas off the top of your head, what that could be.
It's pretty unique.
Maybe integration, more story integration or something.
That maybe so, or are there other ways to parlay that into a bigger story? I don't remember if I made that comment or not. Are there other ways to parlay what you've got going here, because you've got a nice background and some setup, to parlay that into a story that revolves around the card itself? And I don't know then, a lot of these boba places have rewards apps and stuff like that, if they could integrate into something along those lines. Other ways you could take it sort of beyond and broaden the story of the card itself.
Mm-hmm.
Is how I'm perceiving that. I don't remember if I made that comment or not, or what I was thinking if I did. I don't know. But I was just trying to picture, or if that was me, I was probably trying to push in ways to say, like, how, like, this is really cool. How do you take it beyond that?
Sure.
In going on what Freddy said, the performance of the server is going to be vital. I mean, what came to mind for me were the Turkish ice cream vendors that create a whole show about giving you an ice cream cone, and taking the cone away from you, and all of it. It's a whole show, and kids love it. So and there's not even a word that's really said there, because oftentimes there's a language barrier, but it's a movement, it's a pattern. So that type of performance is going to become critical, I think.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, Carlin, for sticking around. We appreciate it. Great work. We're going to move on now. Ohi, welcome. Thank you so much for saving the best for last. Let's say that. Who wants to jump in and talk about Ayong and the Magic Stone?
I was very impressed with this. Loved the thinking and the thought. Like, to me, and Mark and I talked about this too. Like, we felt like this was one of the ones here that felt the most like a full project, a full project cycle. Like, I could see where you started. I can see the conceit. I can see some of your thinking. I can see the layout, operationally, what's going on. I can see what you're thinking of as far as the pre-engagement, the pre-show, into the attraction itself. I think there was a lot of strong things here. I like the fact that you kept it fairly consistent throughout, even relying on some of your own sketches and all, which again were great. It was great to see how you're thinking. It was great to see how you are breaking down each individual scene and how its relevance to the story and how it progresses through. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah, I thought this was a fantastic presentation and conceit. So.
Yeah, and this is what inspired my comment earlier on one of the other presentations, but of just not being afraid to show your work. It's actually very influential, especially in the process. And this is very much something that could come out of our office here at Falcons, where we're presenting a pre-concept to a client and being like, hey, there's this idea. Here's some sketches. We got this boat with some arrows flying overhead, and all this narrative and everything works together. And here's scene 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what we're imagining, and it's all just developed at a level that's not like nothing set in stone. The scale doesn't have to work perfectly, but your box is there, your sequence is there, your storyline is there, and your inspiration is there, and it follows the model of you're an adventurer, you're doing something, and then you've accomplished, you've made it to the end. And so it's just bookend, it's just 100%. It's a bookend attraction. It's got all the elements, and it was well applied to the right category, which was the other thing that I think was where the weakness with some of the others was. Even if they were great, it was like, well, that would have been great in some other category, but this is very much, you didn't even have a master plan beyond this attraction, but you dove into the big broad brushstrokes down to the narrowest elements and details and designs without getting too detailed, right? You didn't go straight into a model. You didn't go straight into some element. So it felt very much like a good just concept for an attraction.
Mm-hmm. I think presentation wise, we were just treated to a really well led, like, as you're putting together this presentation, you were leading your readers through exactly what you wanted them to see, feel, sense, understand, and that is refreshing. And I feel like I learned a lot from you. Really, there's elements here that just make it stand out. For instance, the did you know little bits along the way that help us as a reader understand the context with which you're bringing more information to us. And so if you were pitching this to some park in another part of the world that didn't understand some of those pieces, you would be even further selling the concept and idea. And also, I think there's something here that's very, we all speak our own neighborhood language, our own local language. And the fact that we see a garden that looks probably like a garden you grew up near, and that none of us could have come up with that, brings it to mind that this is for real. A lot of Imagineers, they travel to these places and they bring home stories, and it gets brought to bear pretty accurately, we think. But to tell the story in your own words, from your own legends just makes it even all the more realistic and wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with everything else that's been said so far. You know, my notes said, you know, this project and presentation is the most professional in this category. It's well organized and presented. It takes you on a journey without belaboring small details, but you know that they've been thought of. The graphic layout and design of the presentation is effective and is reflective of the visual look within the attraction. You know, so like what Randy said, you know, a few minutes ago is that, you know, once we start thinking about how does this work, how do you do that, we're already sold. So my other comment was like, you know, I'd like to see a section on operations, capacity planning, and back of house support, so that there was absolutely no critique about the design. It was just going into how do we build this?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a delightful piece to look through. Visual storytelling, you know, your approach to the right amount of description with images, the way you paired them. It's fantastic. Loved it.
Thank you all so much.
Oh, and again, you did this by yourself?
Yeah, this was a sort of 1 month personal project for me that I've always thought of like putting together, but then as soon as I actually started it before I saw the competition, and then once I saw it somewhere online, I was like, okay, perfect. I'll just keep on working on this and submit it.
Impressive.
Great
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, I think
Very
the
impressive.
big lesson learned here by, and I love that this one rose to the top of this category, is for all the other applicants and everyone that participate in this competition, you realize that it's not like the best artwork that's going to win it, right? I mean, I'm sure you could even see there was some great sketches out there. Some of these other projects had great artists that we would hire as an artist, as an entry-level artist in our companies. You know, not all this art, not all the modeling was great, but just the storytelling, like the picture was understood. And that's what, I mean, ultimately when we're in themed entertainment, we're all storytellers. We love to shout out from the rooftops that we are storytellers, and then we have other technical abilities, but we're storytellers, and this is very much was storytelling. And it doesn't take much to tell stories, other than, you know, thinking out little problems and doing little teeny ISO sketches or little things that help illustrate it or add some cool color and, you know, elements, and you have a story. So that's what I love, that this one shined the most, was it actually didn't have the best pieces of art in it, right? But it had the best start to finish story, and that's why it rose to the top.
Excellent. Matt, last word to you if you want to add anything on this last project.
Just that I was amazed that this was an individual. Again, beautiful, really nice work. Enjoyed it. It was really enjoyable. Thanks.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Ohi. And we have a minute or two, and you've been the most patient, going last. We appreciate that. Would you like to ask the panelists any questions?
Well, one thing I would love to ask is, could you sort of share how your initial break into the industry experience was like, and sort of what were the challenges you faced along the way?
Who wants to jump in on
I think we all have a story in that area, but we could be here all night if you ask those questions.
How about this? Raise your hand if you ended up in themed entertainment. Like, oh, I ended up in themed entertainment.
I ended up
I ended up in theme entertainment.
It's a new generation where you actually are targeting in themed entertainment. All of us just kind of happened upon it, and then we never left.
Right.
You know, exactly. It's only more recent that now we've got all these programs and so forth for it. But before, it was just having a door open and saying, "Hey, I want to take that." I moved into it from games, from the games industry and so forth, and it was just on a lark.
I was designing and building playgrounds, and you know, I was like, I want to find something that has something to do with informal education. Really, it was that was like where it headed. And then, you know, Larry Wyatt hired me to design a museum, and then that was it. You know, I was hooked. So
Hey, I worked for Larry. I didn't see, there's that cross connection we keep talking about.
Yeah. We're all connected by probably just 1 degree of separation.
Well, the one quick story I'll tell, because I always tell this to young people, the reason I got into themed entertainment, or in my first interview was with Thinkwell, was because in college I was in a course where I did a little a project with a big group of people. We all took different elements of putting on this stage production, and I was like, well, I'm a landscape architect, I could design the stage, so I'll help design the stage. I did a SketchUp model, did this stuff. So in my interview, I was showing all these things I had, and I had this one design for a stage design, and so I was applying for area development, you know, very much master planning and whatnot. But because my interviewer said, oh, you also like stage design, and I'm like, yes, I love stage design, and I'd only ever done it once, but it showed the diversity and the interest of, like, I could think of things from different avenues. So my advice is always never be afraid to show any bit of work and show any bit of interest, because that may be the thing that hooks you and make you a little different and gets you your first job. So
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. I might just go ahead and add to that, Ohi, that as I advise young people trying to make their break into the industry, from our point of view, it's all about applicable skills and hand skills. What are you actually doing? What are you going to sit down and do? What are you going to draw or design or model or write? You know, this category of master planning is kind of big. You've got a lot of really experienced big thinkers in the room right here. They're probably going to be more the ones doing the big thinking, but then relying on you to help this type of communication, which you've done such an amazing job at. So, you know, double down on the skills that you really enjoy. Do you love drawing this stuff? Do you love modeling this stuff? Those applicable skills are, you know, that's going to get you in. It's going to open doors, and you're demonstrating that you can be a big thinker. So you will progress and ascend into this type of creative direction probably pretty quickly.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes, great job. Thank you. All right, and that wraps us up for the day. Just about right on time. Thank you, Nate and Jesse, for putting together this program for us. We appreciate it. It's very valuable, and we hope all the students who watch this later will get something from it. We presume that they might be able to reach out to the panelists with questions, possibly afterwards, if needed. Maybe we can facilitate that through the site. Nate, any closing thoughts for you?
I just want to say thank you for all the panelists and students for participating. We're trying to make this better and more useful for everyone each year. So if you have any comments, please send them my way. But we will post all these videos online.
I do have a comment that, you know, one for everybody just in general: proofread, proofread, proofread. And then also, just as a structural note, because many of us travel so much, if the material that's posted is downloadable so that we're not dependent on the internet, that would be hugely useful. Because, you know, traveling back and forth to the Middle East, I've got tons of hours sitting on a plane where I could have done this.
Yeah. So downloadable PDFs maybe for every submission. That could be very useful. Yeah. Great. That's a great note.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you to the panelists. Very generous with your time. We appreciate it. And thank you to the students who showed up and stuck around.
Take care.
Everyone have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Bye.
bye.
thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.